You know, what's interesting is companies have this down. Big Food has this down so that you are going to consume as much of this food as possible. They do not have your health in mind. Doritos is one example. They have specific Doritos where they actually make certain chips, maybe a few of them in the bag, extra spicy or a little bit of a different flavor so that you keep eating them to get that spicy, salty chip. It is not your fault that you're wired for these foods. It's the food that wire you to crave them so that these companies can sell more of it.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today we're going to dive into a topic that you've got to master to not only drop the weight, but to keep it off long term, and that is your cravings. I mean, think about it. If you always give in to those pesky thoughts, those desires and cravings every time, you're never going to drop the weight and you're not going to keep it off. So overcoming your cravings, recognizing that is the key to dropping weight and keeping it off long term. And what I want you to understand is that there are a few different reasons why you crave food. And I'm going to go through all of those with you today so you're really clear and have an awareness around why you crave those foods that you do. And so the first one is metabolic. There are metabolically reasons why you just crave those sugary foods, salty foods. Usually it might be a combo. There are emotional reasons why you might crave foods. And then there's the habit and behavior around why you do what you do. So for me, I had this really intense habitual habit of eating something sweet after dinner. It just like paired with the dinner. And it didn't feel like my day was done until I had something sweet. And this is just really a few years ago. And I might not have something too big, but it might be some chocolate or something like that. And the more and more I got into the habit, the more and more I craved the sweet food. And I don't like being slave to anything. I like to have impulse control over what I'm eating and what I'm doing. And so I practiced breaking that habit. So the first thing that I did was I told myself that I had no choice. I'm not going to eat something sweet and sugary after dinner. I needed to let that go. And one thing that I found that helps folks be successful in changing habits is not just to pull away an old habit, but to replace it with something else that's healthier, like to fill the void. You've heard the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum, right? And so you can't just expect yourself to stop doing something that you're used to and not fill that void, because that old habit's going to come rushing back the minute something happens emotionally, stressful, something like that. And so I replaced the habit with something that was healthier. And I really love this hot chocolate. It's Four Sigmatic. I have no affiliation with them, but you should check out the brand. And they have this Rishi hot chocolate. It has no sugar in it, pretty low calorie. And I love to do maybe one or two of those with a little bit of heavy cream after dinner. So I told myself, I have no choice, nothing sweet, nothing high calorie, because it wasn't leading to my ultimate goals of feeling fit and sleeping well and waking up rested. It just messed with my metabolism. And I'll talk about what that does, that late night eating, later. So I replaced it with that, or I told myself that if I'm truly hungry, I'm going to have some chicken broth or vegetable broth, because that actually does feel satiating. And I had eaten enough throughout the day, so it wasn't like I was low on calories. I really didn't need anything. I knew it was a habit. And so as I progressed through the weeks and I gave myself no choice to eat something sweet, but filled that void with these other options, oh my gosh, I was able to transform the habit into something healthier. It has stuck because years later, that's now what I do after dinner if I'm going to have or enjoy something. So if you have an habitual behavioral aspect that you need to change, make sure that you are taking out the old habit but replacing it with something different. We have clients all the time who come in and they're used to drinking alcohol. And, alcohol does shut down the metabolism. One shot of alcohol stops fat burn for about 4 to 6 hours, and increasing drinks beyond 2-3 drinks will delay fat burn, stop fat burn exponentially, like 2 to 3 days. And so for most of our clients, you can drink alcohol. Certain alcohols are better than others if you want to drop weight. So you can do that, but it's going to be better and easier if you just let it go, at least for a short period of time. And so what we had our clients do, or what we suggest, is to put some bubbly water in the wine glass. So they're not just like drinking nothing, but they're putting bubbly water, maybe with a squeeze of lemon or a lime, in that wine glass, sitting down, resting, and associating that new habit also with relaxation and calm. So that's another idea of breaking a habit. Another common habit is late night eating. And that's kind of what I had, but it was with sweets specifically. So use that same tool if you struggle with that. The other type of craving that you want to be able to master and be aware of are emotional cravings. And so I have a client, Matt, and he came in with this almost addiction, this craving for cookies. And he just had the hardest time letting go of the cookies. And he would do really, really well throughout the day, maybe even throughout the week. But then on the weekends, he would hit those cookies so hard. And, the same thing goes for you. You can eat really well throughout the week, but you can totally ruin all the progress you've made in one quote unquote cheat day. I hate the term cheat because it makes us feel bad for something that we're doing when we shouldn't feel bad. So I also advise that you take out the cheat day. But anyway, you can ruin your whole week if you eat crappy on the weekend. And this is what Matt was doing. And so every week we came up with different habits and behaviors, tried to replace the void, not just take them out, but it wasn't working. And so we dug a little bit deeper and we figured out that his mom passed away when he was young. And in order to show love, or how she showed love, was she made him cookies. And so he associated his mother's love, of which he lost when he was a young boy, with cookies. And that's why he had that craving for cookies. It was the emotional connection of love associated with the cookie. So at the moment that he had awareness of what the cookie meant to him, he was able to shift the behavior and let go of the craving. And then we have metabolic cravings, and these are what we deal with at PhD all the time. And these are the cravings that happen because of the hormones that are being secreted in your body. When you eat specific foods, when you eat above your carbohydrate tolerance level, it spikes blood glucose, and I've talked a lot about this in previous episodes. But when you have high glucose levels in the blood, it spikes hormones like insulin, and insulin is a fat storage hormone. It spikes other hormones like ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone. It's going to make you hungry throughout the day. So metabolically, your body is just physiologically not full, not satiated, and you're going to have cravings for that food. And so I had a client, and many clients are like this, but her name was Lisa, and she came in to me, and she actually owned a bakery. And she said, there's no way that I'm not going to crave my chocolate cake. It's the best chocolate cake in the world. I have a piece every night, and oh my gosh, I crave it, and it's my favorite food. And I told her, we're going to shift up the way that you eat. We're going to get you into the sweet spot where you don't have these blood glucose highs and compensatory lows, where you're actually burning fat for fuel. And when you get into that sweet state, it feels like a flow state, and you are not going to crave the cake. She couldn't believe it. She's like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I am telling you straight up that within 3 weeks, she had no more cravings for chocolate cake. And if you were to go to our website, it's myphdweightloss.com, and just check out the reviews, you will read through the details, and you will see probably over 70% of them talk about not being hungry and not having cravings anymore. So what you need to be aware of is that there are many reasons why you have these cravings: metabolic, mental and emotional, habit and behavior. And the only way to drop weight and keep it off is to be able to overcome the craving. You've got to be stronger than the craving. If you always give in, I promise you it will be a constant battle, and the craving will win. I urge you to check out a previous episode that I've done on the traits of successful dieters. I hate that term dieter, but the traits of folks who drop weight and keep it off successfully. And one of the main things that they're able to do is they have this impulse control. And this goes back to cravings, right? When you have a craving and you just give in, you have no impulse control. So this is a trait that you've got to get down if you want to be successful at dropping the weight and keeping it off. You've got to think about the foods that you eat and how it impacts you now and later. You can't have the 4-year-old mentality driving your actions. It was interesting. I was just traveling, and I was staying with a group of people, and there was an interesting couple, and the wife was extremely lean, and she had really bad headaches if she ate a certain way. So she ate a very clean diet. I'm talking, animal proteins, her veggies or greens, healthy fats, some fruits. But besides that, she couldn't do dairy. She couldn't do gluten, because if she did, she had this immediate terrible headache, and she would vomit for a day. And her husband, who was there, was struggling with probably 70 pounds of excess weight and all real big belly, like all in his belly, that visceral fat. And I've talked about visceral fat in my previous episodes. You really want to understand this visceral fat because this visceral fat acts like a tumor. It gets in there, it secretes hormones, and all it wants to do is get fatter and fatter as fast as possible. And it makes you hungry, it makes you crave, slows your metabolism, makes you lazy. And in men, it actually secretes a hormone called aromatase, which takes your testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So this guy here, he's carrying 70 pounds of excess fat weight. His testosterone is low. His joints hurt. He probably has high blood pressure. He's got a 13-year-old son. And, what kind of role model is that? And, all these reasons I can see that, oh my gosh, you need to drop this weight. And they asked me what I do. And I said, weight loss. And he goes, oh my gosh, don't even talk to me about it. I'm not interested in making any changes. I love my beer and I love my bread way too much. And so this is it really emphasized this point here. He's just thinking about the now. The 4-year-old is creating his mentality and controlling his mentality. And he's not thinking about the later. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what his body's going to be like and feel like. Whereas his wife didn't have an option, right? She felt the now and the later right there in that moment. So I would say that one could look at her and be like, oh my gosh, that poor lady. But really, her body's giving her a clear sign through her symptoms that she cannot eat that way. And his body's doing the same thing, but he's just not listening. So I share this story with you so that you understand the impact that your actions have now and the importance to overcome the cravings of your beer or that bread. If you ever call a food like it's my bread, I love my beer, that's probably a food that really doesn't love you back and you've got to let it go. So I want to share with you some techniques on how to overcome cravings. You're thinking about fueling your body, not your craving in general. So the first thing is to have an awareness of the type of craving that's coming. So is it metabolic? So that metabolic craving that I talked about is driven by the foods that you're eating. And I want to read off to you the list of the most highly addictive foods that you're going to crave. Pizza, chocolate, salty chips, cookies, ice cream, fries, cheeseburgers, and soda. Those are, when you look them up, the biggest foods that people are addicted to and you are going to crave them. So if you want to let go of these cravings, those are the foods you need to watch out for. They are processed and made in the way that makes them chewy and salty and sweet where you just can't stop. What's interesting is companies have this down. Big Food has this down so that you are going to consume as much of this food as possible. They do not have your health in mind. Doritos is one example. They have specific Doritos where they actually make certain chips, maybe a few of them in the bag, extra spicy or a little bit of a different flavor, so that you keep eating them to get that spicy, salty chip. It's kind of like me with cookie dough ice cream. Ice cream is my trigger food. I crave it. If it's in the house, I can't stop thinking about it. And I really love cookie dough ice cream. And I will just keep digging for that gosh darn dough in there. And before I know it, I've eaten like half or the whole container of ice cream. So recognize those foods. Recognize, like I described earlier, that they're causing the blood glucose spike and the low. It is not your fault that you're wired for these foods. It's the foods that wire you to crave them so that these companies can sell more of it. So then the emotional type of craving, and this is driven by thoughts, and it can be related to stress, trauma, early life, childhood stress, trauma experiences can really result in these type of cravings, just like I explained with Matt and cookies and his mother's love. And what happens here with emotional cravings is that you continue to wire and fire your old stories and beliefs. You're living in your past and recreating it over and over and over again if you don't realize that that is the foundation of your craving. So to liberate yourself from emotional cravings, you need to move through these old stories and beliefs and think and act differently. So I love the work of Joe Dispenza. He's a researcher in the field of neuroscience and neuroplasticity. He creates transformational change in people's lives, and he does it through meditation and mindfulness. And I was listening to a video that he recently posted, and he said, knowing that something is not good for you and still holding on to it anyway is a surefire sign of addiction. And you can be addicted to your thoughts, you can be addicted to emotions, you can be addicted to food. So I want you to think about that for yourself. If you're holding on to something that is not good for you, just like this fellow I mentioned with his bread and his beer, he was holding on to something that was not good for him. And that is an addiction. And when you have that addiction, it leads to continuous craving. So you've really got to break the emotional state. The key to overcoming emotional cravings, besides awareness, is to break that emotional state. And what I mean by that is break your state, breathe. You can think of box breathing. I've been teaching my son box breathing recently. And what that is you breathe in for 4 counts. Imagine a line moving up a box for 4. You hold for 4 as you move across the box. You breathe out for 4 as you move down the box, and you hold for 4 as you move back across, and you just repeat that. So much research showing that that can help to break your emotional state. Exercise, getting out and move can break your state, and then listening to music. So if you feel like you're in a funk and you have these emotional cravings, get out there and break your state. And then the habitual type of craving is that last type that we talked about, and that is where your body and brain loves routine. So I'm going to give you an example not associated with food, but for me, I used to not make my bed. Probably high school, college, I would never make my bed, and I didn't think anything of it. And then I read this book about traits of successful people and, I don't know, the millionaire mindset or whatever. And I was like, okay, this is me. I want to grow into this. How can I up-level myself? I'm going to make it a habit of making my bed every morning. And I set that routine. And I would say like 80% of the time I would make my bed. And over time, practicing that 80% making my bed, it became a habit. And more, I'd start to do it every day. And I could see myself move into, that was just who I was. I was a person who made my bed in the morning. And it might seem silly to you, but these are how habits are broken and made with food and lifestyle. It's the same thing. So today, if I wake up and I don't make my bed, I just don't feel right. It doesn't feel like me. And when I get back into the bed at night, it just kind of feels dirty in a way, disheveled, chaotic. My brain needs things organized to think clearly and do all that I do. And so now that is a part of me. And so I share this with you because the same thing goes, like I said, with food. Don't think that you have to be perfect, but 80% of the time, make those new habits familiar so the brain goes to it and it's just a part of who you are. When I go out and I go to a restaurant, I don't get French fries. It's just not something that is on my radar. It's not meant for me. I know it's not going to serve me. It's not a food that loves me back. And so for me, who I am is I would order a burger without the bun and a salad with delicious dressing, and that would feel and taste indulgent and satisfying to me. And so that's what the goal is as you're moving through these lifestyle changes and breaking cravings, specifically the habitual ones, is you want to make those healthy habits familiar and routine to your brain because that's what your brain loves. And then as you're overcoming these cravings, the next tip is for you to recognize common sensations. So you need to understand what hunger is. A lot of people don't understand what hunger is. So if you've never felt hunger, you are not alone. I see this in clients all the time. Hunger for a lot of people is a sensation in their belly that's rumbling or grumbling. It can also be a little lightheadedness. People can get hangry where they're hungry and angry. Usually if you get hangry, that can be resolved. I don't see any of our clients get hangry anymore. That's usually an issue with blood glucose highs and compensatory lows, which we can eliminate by shifting the way that you eat. So just know if you get hangry and you want to make a change and you hate that feeling, you can do that and solve it, resolve it, and not have that happen to you anymore. But with that type of sensation of hunger, sometimes lightheadedness, some people get really tired when they're hungry, but it's recognizing when are you hungry and when are you having a craving. I have a funny story to share with you with one of my clients. Her name was Sharon, and she came in and I told her at PhD, we practice what hunger feels like. It doesn't mean that you're hungry all the time. Actually, our clients are very rarely hungry, but it's important to get that feeling and understand when you're hungry so you can disassociate yourself with the cravings and desires and understand what true hunger is. And so I told her, okay, I want you to do an experiment with me if you would. And she was open to it. I said, I don't want you to eat until you get hungry. And maybe she would skip breakfast and lunch. And she came back to me the next week and she didn't eat for 4 days. She didn't feel hunger for 4 full days and had never experienced real hunger in her life because she was always eating. She had about 150 pounds to drop, and she just always constantly fed her body because she thought she was experiencing hunger, but it was only cravings, not only, but it was cravings and desires that pushed her to eat a certain way. So understanding hunger, knowing that hunger is not an emergency, you're not going to die from being hungry, and that you're in control of it is so important to dropping weight and keeping it off long term. So thirst is a common sensation that we get, but a lot of people actually get confused between thirst and hungry. They think that they're hungry when really they're thirsty. So I always recommend that you drink a cup of water, maybe 8 to 12 ounces of water when you think that you're hungry. And you might find that that water did it because truthfully you were thirsty, which is a dry sensation in your mouth. Then you've got desire, and that is wanting to eat because you have a trigger right after you've eaten. So this might be you're at a restaurant, you're totally full, you see someone bring out the cheesecake and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to eat some cheesecake. That is desire. You don't have to listen to that desire, but that's not craving, that's not hunger. And then you've got the craving. And a craving is a strong urge to eat accompanied with tension and like a yearning sensation in your throat, in your mouth, in your body. That is a craving. So I want you to be able to recognize these common sensations and then understand that cravings and hunger aren't emergencies. So now let's go through some mindset techniques to help you overcome these cravings once you have the awareness of the type and you're able to recognize common sensations. So number 1 is label it. This is a craving. It's going to pass. It's like a wave in the ocean. I don't have to pay attention to it. I don't have to listen to it. That's all it is. Number 2, stand firm. Give yourself no choice. So this is really helpful when you might be going into an event. Say you have a specific meal plan. It's a healthy lifestyle, foods that you're focusing on, foods that you are not eating. You know, that's what our clients have at PhD, foods to focus, foods to avoid for a period of time as they get into the state of fat burn. And if they go into an event, I always suggest that they give themselves no choice. If the food is not on their meal plan, they're not even going to consider it. It's when you go into this event and you hem and haw, should I, shouldn't I? That's when it gets really tricky. And when this strong, unpleasant yearning comes in, this craving comes in, you're going to be more likely to give in rather than resist. So give yourself no choice. It's actually more respectful and loving to yourself if you do that over giving yourself an option when you're in the moment where it might be stressful or you have decision fatigue. So next is imagine what it would feel like if you gave in. So understanding that giving in really undermines your confidence. Not living up to your standards is what keeps you up at night. So if you can imagine how it would feel if you did eat that cake, if you did drink that beer after the fact, usually the positive benefit, the reward of eating that food doesn't last very long. And then we don't feel confident in ourselves because we've gone into the scenario where we didn't want to eat that food that we craved to begin with. So think about how you would feel if you gave in and if it's really worth it to you. Next would be to remind yourself of your why. Remember that your why needs to be strong. It needs to be bigger than yourself. It includes other people that you love who are depending on you, who want to see you succeed. And bring your why to the front of your brain, of your purpose, of your mission. Keep it up there on the mirror where you brush your teeth. Put it as your screensaver, but see that why. So when that food, that drink, whatever comes up, you can say no to it. You can resist it. And then there are a few specific behavioral techniques that I want to share with you too. So distance yourself from the food. Don't purchase it. Don't keep it in the house. Remember that your environment is always stronger than your willpower. If your spouse, for example, really needs the cupcake, then ask for your spouse to keep it in a cabinet where you're not going to see it. Keep it in an opaque container that you can't see through on the counter. Have them have a specific area of the pantry that is just no choice. It's not for you. Sometimes I bring treats home for the kids, and my husband has a propensity to eat those treats. And so he tells himself, like, this is not mine. This is not for me. I'm not even going to look at it or consider it. And that can be a really helpful behavioral technique to overcome the cravings. Drink water, relax, change your state. Like I said, breathe, exercise, listen to music, and then change your environment. Go for a walk, call a friend, get outside in nature, feel your feet on the ground, bring yourself back down into reality. Take a look at where you are. Sometimes it can be helpful to just sit in a chair and call out the colors that you see. I see a white chair, a brown desk, I see a beige floor, and just reroute yourself into your surroundings, ground yourself, and it will allow the craving to pass and help you bring resistance into that strengthening of overcoming that craving. And then just make sure from a nutrition standpoint that you're getting enough protein. If your diet is skewed toward more carbs and less fat, less protein, then you're going to have more cravings metabolically. So remember, first meal of the day and last meal of the day are the most important to set you up for success. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, but what it is the most important meal to get right. So make sure that you're consuming about 30 to 45 grams of protein with your breakfast meal and your dinner meal, ideally your lunch meal as well. But you'll find that if you target protein first and you hit those targets, you're going to metabolically have less cravings throughout the day. So our coaches at PhD are amazing in their skill set to help people change their mindset, overcome cravings and habits and things like that. And we have a coach and her name is Allie. She's great. And she says that true hunger eats a hard-boiled egg. And that's so true, right? So if you have a craving come up, I want you to sit with it. And you're going to ask yourself, okay, am I really hungry? Would I eat a hard-boiled egg right now? And if the answer is yes, then get up and go put some salt on a delicious hard-boiled egg and get 7 grams of protein and some great fats and vitamins and minerals and enjoy it. But if the answer is no, I don't want the hard-boiled egg, but I do want that beer, or I do want that bread or that cupcake or that ice cream, then you get to use these techniques that I just shared with you to overcome that craving. I hope that you got great value from this episode and that it helps you overcome cravings and build new habits and behaviors toward a healthier lifestyle. If you did, please share with your friends so that they can get these tools as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, please drop a comment below. I read them, I respond to it. I want to hear your thoughts and your feedback. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform like Spotify, please subscribe and leave a review. And remember, you've got to step up and make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. See you next time.